Sundaramukam Tambraravindeksham Bhaktabhishtavarabhayapradakaram Kaupinamatrojjvalam Svatmanandarasanubhuti Sarvanavadyangakam Shrimantam Shri Ramaneshwaram Guruvaram Yogasanadhyasitam Dhyayet Shri Ramaneshwaram Dhyayet Shri Ramaneshwaram Dhyayet Shri Ramaneshwaram Hridaya Kuhara Madhye Kevalam Brahmamatram Yahamaham Sakshat Atmarupena Bhati Hridivishamanasa Swam Chinvata Majjatava Pavana Chalanarodha Atmanishto Bhavatvam Namo Ramana. We will commence the Friday evening Atma Vichara Satsangh with listening to Bhagavan's Upadesham. As always, we have been reading from the book Ramana Answers, Self-Enquiry 1900 to 1950. From this book, it's a compilation of all the answers given by Bhagavan on the subject matter of Atma Vichara, that is self-enquiry. The compilation is by our founder, President Sri R. Natarajanji. We are now in the second segment of the book, wherein all the question and answers asked to Bhagavan on Atma Vichara between 1936 to 1950 have been compiled, and we are in that second section on the fourth question. We looked at it last week. We will complete looking into it this week by Bhagavan's grace. The question is, after this listening to Bhagavan's Upadesham, we will have a Atma Vichara for 20 minutes, and then our President Sharda Akka would be talking about Atma Vichara from Ramana Gita. The question that has been put to Bhagavan: what constitutes self-enquiry? What is its utility? Can better results be achieved through other methods? I'll read the question again. What constitutes self-enquiry? What is its utility? Can better results be achieved through other methods? To which Bhagavan says, the I thought is said to be the sum total of all thoughts. Enquire into the source of this I thought. This is self-enquiry, and not the critical study of scriptures. When the source is searched, the ego gets merged in it. The self alone remains in all its perfection and fullness when the ego merges in it. Results of self-enquiry is a cure for all sorrows. It is the highest of all results. There is nothing greater than this. We'll look again into Bhagavan's answer once more. The I thought is said to be the sum total of all thoughts. Enquire into the source of the I thought. This is self enquiry and not the critical study of scriptures. When the source is searched, the ego gets merged in it. The self alone remains in all its perfection and fullness when the ego merges in it. Results of self enquiry is a cure for all sorrows. It is the highest of all results. There is nothing greater than this. In this question that has been put, there has been a clarification asked about inquiry is, and then what are its benefit. And finally, whatever benefit or the result that comes out of the self-inquiry, is there something else that we can do by some other methods? And is there a chance of any better result? That means the result, what self-inquiry does, is there a result which is better than what self-inquiry delivers? And Bhagavan is very clearly saying that all such thoughts is nothing but the I thought only. So he says the thought is said to be the sum total of all. The I thought is said to thoughts. Therefore, all these thoughts and any thoughts we may have, not only related to Atma Vichara, even if it is related to the world, anything is essentially ego only. Bhagavan is making it very clear. It is nothing but ego. This is self and not the, and then he further goes as enquiring into the source of the I thought. So when we recognize that all thought is nothing but the I thought only, therefore it is all ego. But if we inquire what is the source of that ego, so what do I refer to as I? When we try to inquire into the source, that is the self-inquiry, and not any critical study of scriptures. It may not be just study in the form of reading, but it could be even listening to these. Instead of listening, as usually Nanda Kumarji used to say, even in workshops that used to be conducted in RMCL, he used to be very sweet in saying that you need not even listen to me. If you can turn your attention within and see who is the listener, it is I. Therefore, who am I? If you go into it, whether we listen to this external thing is not important, because the result, which is to abide in the self, results when we turn our attention hearing to the I, and from I into the one, the source, and that is all that is required. So therefore, even this critical listening or critical reading of the scriptures is not required, because the knowledge is also an object, and therefore keeps us with the division of the one who knows the knowledge and one who is aware of the knowledge. Continue to be there. Therefore, Bhagavan is saying the essential need is to be the self, to abide in the self. And however we do, when the source is searched, the ego gets merged in it. The self alone remains in all its perfection and fullness when the ego merges. This is the essence. As part of my organization thing, I was looking into certain World Economic Forum and everything. And therefore, there was one of this professor from London Business School. He talks about the subject called the. It's a beautiful video. It can be seen in YouTube, wherein he says that he asks these fundamental questions to himself and he reveals, he has done the meditation and he is revealing the answer in the forum. And the question that he puts it, do people fundamentally not change unless there is a severe event in their life? And we see that when there are severe events in the life, they fundamentally change. So is it very essential that some event has to happen to fundamentally change? That's the question he puts it. And he says that he's a professor in London, and he was also for some years in France. And he would get, leave. His children would get leave only in the July time, and they would go. And basically, he's from Calcutta, so he would go to Calcutta for the vacation. And in Calcutta during that time, it would be really summer, and it would be 102 degrees temperature and lot of heat and humidity, 99% humidity. He would never feel like going out of the house. But the same person in the spring, in the French, in the forest, even though he says that I would decide I will simply gently take a walk inside the forest, and moment he enters into that forest, he finds that the smell of the trees, the cool wind, the atmosphere over there makes him to jump, run in joy. So he finally had this inquiry. I am the same person in an atmosphere where, like, I am in Calcutta, which is humid and suffocating. I'm not motivated to do the same jumping and enjoying. Whereas in this atmosphere, I am finding myself to be very joyful. So he fundamentally asks a question. In fact, he puts it in the business forum, saying that if we are creating an atmosphere in an organization which is like a Calcutta kind of a summer atmosphere, how do you expect people to be proactive and changing? Should you not give an environment which is something similar to the forest, where they find very exciting to work on it? So should we wait for some critical event to happen, or should we not create an environment? I took the same example to Atma Vichara. In fact, we are all trying to change the identity that we are identified with, right? We are trying to see that we are identified so much with this body and mind. And should a critical event happen for us to make that big shift? Or should we not create an environment? And when we ask this question, it becomes very clear. The environment has to be created. Right now, this identification with this body and mind is an environment which is equivalent to the summer atmosphere of Calcutta, wherein we are not not so active. We may be acting in the morning. By the time we come to the evening, we are tired and find that we would be tired with the running mind and everything. So how do we create an atmosphere of the forest from morning till evening? And Bhagavan has given us this Atma Vichara. He says, instead of being in the Calcutta, identifying with an atmosphere which is similar to Calcutta, in that very substratum, there is this forest atmosphere, the atmosphere of the self, where it is here and now accepting the entire thing without making a fuss about it. It is just giving light to everything. Its presence is so blissful. It has no divisions, no complaints to make, and that atmosphere is available. So Bhagavan is asking us to turn our attention from the Calcutta kind of environment that we are simply attending by our own will, and therefore not able to turn within and get acquainted with the forest atmosphere which is available to us. Bhagavan is saying all we need to do is inquire the source of the I thought, and we have moved away from the Calcutta environment to the environment of the forest. then what happens? Bhagavan says the self alone remains in its full perfection. In that the ego merges. Then the result is that it is the cure of all sorrows. Once the ego is absorbed in the self, there is no more that person who was experiencing the sorrow. He is absorbed. It is the highest of all result. What else can be asked for? And there is nothing greater than this, says Bhagavan. So Bhagavan has given us the Atma Vichara as a means to recognize there is that natural environment which is already present and repeatedly get back to it and enjoy the bliss, enjoy that highest result here and now. With the immense grace of Bhagavan, with which alone we have come to this direct path of Atma Vichara. We have to recognize that it is the Vichara, the practice of the Vichara, be it in the case of the professor or be it in the case of us, that takes us to this clear recognition that it is the environment, it is in the presence of that self that all sorrows will eventually get disappeared and the highest result becomes available to us. The immense grace of Bhagavan for the next 20 minutes, let us do Atma Vichara.
भगवते श्रीरमणाय।
नमो भगवते श्रीरमणाय। Namo Ramana. Over to Sharda Akka.
Namo Ramana. Thank you, Dilip. Prostrate, shining as the self in all beings. Dilip brought home to us the need for a critical situation, the need for a difficulty to turn our minds inward. We have seen this happening in many ways. Bhagavan himself says, as a boy of 16, he was faced by an intense fear of death. And he says, the shock of the fear of death drove my mind inwards. So it is the intensity, and the intensity will immediately drive the mind inward. Sri G. Kameshwar has shared an example with me of a frog. It is taken into it is put into a pot of water, not temperature water, and the water, if so long as the water is quite all right, cool, and the frog being in water, it's quite happy. And after that, this pot of water is put on the gas stove, slow flame, light flame, and slight heat is created. It will be uncomfortable for the frog, but in spite of that, the frog will not jump out. It will slowly get used to it. It's slightly warm, that's all. And if we keep on increasing the heat slowly, the experiment says, the frog does not out. Every time from hot, it becomes slightly hotter, slightly hotter. It adjusts itself to slightly hotter, and ultimately it gets cooked in that. Whereas the experiment says, if you take a frog and just put it into a pot of boiling water, where the boiling water is boiling, it immediately jumps out. So that level of the intensity of a difficulty turns the mind inward. But should one wait for that intense difficulty? Bhagavan says, no, Atmanishto Bhavatvam. Become Atmanishta here and now. Because that is the only truth, that is the only meaningful thing. The critical experiences, when they come, it is called that we are told there is a smashana vairagya. It is when any death happens, when we hear the news of death, then immediately we feel that the whole of life is it is very transient. What is the use? And we have to quickly do something about it. But Bhagavan says, after some time, the mind gets back to its usual ways. But if we feel that there is this beautiful joy of being in the self and functioning from the self, Bhagavan calls it the heart-based life, as opposed to the mind-based life. If we feel the importance of abiding, then Bhagavan has given us the way to do so, says Muni. Over here in this shloka, in the Eka Shloki of his, he has first talked about the glory of the self, the glory of that abidance in the self. Hridaya kuhara madhye kevalam brahmamatram hi ahamaham sakshat atmarupena bhati. It is shining, as I. Hridi Visha. Enter the heart, says Bhagavan. And so Muni says this is Bhagavan has described first the state of, he has described the glory of the self. He has described that it is Ishvara is not different from it, that the self is experienced directly by us. It is pratyaksha, it is aparoksha, and it does not require any descriptions whatsoever. And in that second half, says Muni, this is the first half. Nanalinga Nivarhanam Upadesho Dvitiyardhe Shishyabhyasa Krite Kritaha. For the practice of the disciple, Bhagavan has given the path. In the second half, Tredha Bhinnena Margena Tatvad Aikyam Samiyusha. Muni says three paths have been delineated by Bhagavan. Swam Chinvata, Majjata, Pavana Charana Rodhat. So he has said that there are three. Muni says there are three, but Tattva Aikyam Samiyusha. But they are really, in essence, one path. They are one path. If we look at the paths, we will see what Bhagavan is saying is, he says, Swam Chinvata, by inquiry into one's own true nature. Self-inquiry. One gets back to the self. You can get back to the self, says Bhagavan. Or va means or va is also interpreted by some as and because Bhagavan has not normally advocated the path of bread control as an independent means to abide in the self, but only as a support to the sadhana. So, Pavana Charana Rodha is breath control. To dive within, to dive in, to sink, to dissolve in the source. So, Bhagavan is saying you can either search, you can inquire, or dive into the source. You can merge into the source, seek the source. Who am I? Or whence am I? What is my source? So this is the inquiry on which we have been meditating. What is the Swam Chinvata? Inquiry into one's own. And why should one inquire into one's own true nature? Swam Chinvata, it means that we have to inquire about our true nature because we are not aware of it. When Bhagavan says Atmanishto Bhava, Bhava, he says, become. So that means it is a state to be attained. But Bhagavan also says it is ever there, Kevalam Brahma Matram. Then where is the question of attaining it? Where is the question of becoming Atmanishta? Becoming Atmanishta. It is because we have forgotten, we have lost touch. We are lost in some kind of a shadowy existence. We are living in a world of shadows. We are living in a world of reflections. Bhagavan says in Ashtakam, it is a shadowy existence, like images projected in a movie, he says. So, what does one do? One has to, first of all, recognize this cannot be my true nature. Unless one recognizes that this cannot be my true nature, one will not want to inquire into the truth of oneself. If I take myself to be this alone, why will I want to inquire? So until it hits us, until the intensity of the truth that this is not my true nature, until it hits us, we will not try to hold on to the self inquiry. But when it hits us, then we will start inquiry. We start inquiry. Whenever we see that everything that we have taken to be the I is transitory, it is passing. In the Anubandham class, and the Kumarji was saying, there are some attributes given to the self. It is stable. It is the stratum. It is that from which everything arises. What of the body? Is it sustaining itself? Can it be its source of own sustenance, of its own sustenance? It is not so. Neither are the thoughts their own source of sustenance. The whole experience of the body, of the world, happens to us in our mind. Each and every moment, an experience is arising in our mind of the world. Whatever we see, whatever we perceive, whatever we know, where is it known? Where is it perceived? It is perceived in our mind. Every experience of ours, even the sense experiences and the subtle experiences, they're all felt by us in the mind in the form of thoughts. Felt by us, felt by me. All my experiences are for me. I experience all this. I experience it. So if I experience it, the experience is not independent of me. It is not substratum. I am the substratum. Who is this I? Who is this I? In every experience of mine, who is the I? In every experience. If we slowly look at our experiences, if we are not running with the running mind, says Bhagavan, if we can just stand back or slow down, pull back a bit, and then watch the experiences, and we realize, okay, this experience is for me. I am angry. I am sad. And if we slowly become, make it even slower, if we expand it very, very, very slowly and see, I am sad. Instead of, when we become sad, we become sad. Why did this happen? Why is it happening? Why is it happening to me? I do not know what the world is coming to. And even like this, so many hundreds and thousands of thoughts we allow. Instead of that, if we say sorrow, yes, there is sorrow. And without going into the fact of why the sorrow, what is this sorrow? Instead of that, Bhagavan asks us to look at for whom the sorrow is for me. I am sad. And I am sad means that I am holding sorrow as my experience by paying attention to that sorrow, by putting the light of attention on to an object which I call sorrow. I put the light of attention onto that. And another moment, if I drop my sorrow, if something makes me happy, I have shifted my light of attention from that I am sad to I am happy. So Bhagavan says if we slow down and look As he says to Humphreys, look at that which is experiencing these phenomena. Look at that. So ask yourself, let us try to see in every experience of ours, who is this I? Who is this I? Again and again and again, as every experience arises, Dilip would always say that every thought is an opportunity to get back to the source, to ask ourselves, for whom? For whom? And in that thought, in every thought, there is I am. There is I am. Even when I think of somebody else, if I think of somebody else, it is I am aware of that person. I am thinking of that person. I am thinking. I am thinking that person was so great, was so nice, was so wonderful. What happened? Why did he pass away? What happened? Supposing I hear a news and then my mind is on that. But whose mind is on that? It is my mind. It is my thought. I am thinking about that, and I am caught up in that. I am caught up in that object. My entire being goes into that object, trying to ask, who is this I who is experiencing it? If I minus the anger, if I minus the sorrow, if I minus the thought, who am I? Who am I? And we don't seem to value that I. Why don't we value that I? The basis, that is the basis for all my thoughts. But I do not value it. I value the experience. I run behind the experience. I hold on to the turn attention back to the I every time. But swam chindata is to turn the of what use is any experience which I call my experience if I am. Of what use is it to me? Am I happy that the entire world is happy if I am not happy? Be happy. If everyone else is happy and I am not happy, I want to be happy. I want to experience something. Without knowing that I, it is like living for a stranger. Which is what we are doing. So many millions of experiences are coming and going and coming and going and coming and going. And we are chasing them one after the other, one after the other, regardless of the I for whom all these experiences are rising and into whom all these experiences. So when this strikes us again and again, we turn our attention back to the source. We do not worry about the thought. We do not pursue the thought. Rather, as Bhagavan says in Guru Vachakovai, before the thought arises, we are ready. We are ready to turn there. By the force of our vasanas, when thoughts arise, again and again, relentlessly, if we turn the attention back to the self, then ultimately it will be Bhagavan's blessing, Atmanishto Bhava. And the beauty is, Bhagavan says, at one time there is only one thought. So drop that one thought. It's enough. We don't have to drop a million thoughts. Million thoughts we say. We don't have to. Every moment we only have to drop one thought with the question, for whom is, and we will be back to the source. In that moment, we'll be back to the source. Again, if it happens, again we have to repeat the same process. But at that moment, there is only one thought to tackle. There are not millions of thoughts to tackle. That's the beauty, that's the grace. So, by Bhagavan's grace, Let us Chinmata by repeatedly inquiring into our true nature. Let us all abide in the self by the infinite grace of Bhagavan. Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramana.
अपार सच्चित् सुखपरिदर्शे यस्योर्मिमात्रं भुवनं समस्तम् गुहाहितं तं रमणं गभीरम् चिन्ताविहीनं हृदि चिन्तयामि चिन्ताविहीनं हृदि चिन्तयामि. Namo Ramana. Thank you all. Thank you, Akka.
Namo Ramana.